British bike of the year 2000. But 100 years ago, things were not like this. This one's got everything, electronic gizmos, hydraulic disc brakes, you couldn't want more. But if you come with me on a little trip back in time, I'll show you how things started. So motorbikes, but where to start? Well, how about 1898, and how about starting with this? It's a trike of all things. So if you thought trikes were new, think again. This one was actually made by a company called Dennis, more famous these days for fire engines, ambulances and even buses. You might have seen that Dennis sign on the front. But this was their first motorised transport. And look at it. In fact, it looks quite cool actually with these big tyres here. But at the back it's got a massive cast iron engine made by the French company, but in fact manufactured in Coventry, but it was Didier design. But the thing that attracts you to this thing, all this nickel plating on the fuel tank, and look at all these levers here. You've got brake levers here, one brake lever which operates a little band brake on the actual wheels, another one which operates it round on the transmission shaft down there. But then you've got all these levers here. There's 4 levers here, one for a choke, another for the throttle, another one, when I get the right one, actually for a decompression lever, just there, hear it creaking away. And the other one was for the ignition, and it actually swings the whole ignition coil, the contact breaker assembly, around the crank down the bottom there. But an amazing piece of work. But not only that, if I can squeeze past this one, if you thought trikes are something new, what about quads? Because here is a quad, and this one was made by Royal Enfield. Look at that seat up the front. I can think of a few people I'd like to put in there. But again, great big engine at the back. And you might wonder why they actually made quads and trikes and not motorcycles. Well, that was because that engine was so damned heavy. They hadn't had bicycle frames then, and they just couldn't get a bicycle frame to take that sort of weight. Right, let's get on to motorbikes then. Now this one happens to be an Excelsior, but in 1902 when this came out, Triumph brought out their first bike as well. But we're going to have a look at this one because, to be quite frank, this one's easier to get to. Look at it, it is a big bicycle with a big engine in there. I don't know what the size of this engine is, but I'd say it's about a 350cc, but they always used to be measured in horsepower in those days. But just looking round it, you see this nickel plating again, which was a thing of the day, wooden handlebar grips. How about that for something different? Talk about customising. And again, you can see these throttle controls just the same as the other one, and they're all highly visible there where the air comes in, down the other side, down to the top here. They used to use what they called a surface carburettor there, which wasn't a carburettor as we know today. It just used to sort of suck petrol off the top of the pot. And there we've got the spark plug in the side there. Look at this exhaust pipe here. Look at that for an end can, eh? They even had sports end cans then. But that's the engine. Ignition system, again, you could move it round the crankshaft just like that to give you your automatic, well not automatic, your manual advance and retard. Brake levers here. Now on the front brake, it's just got a stirrup front brake, and in fact, to be honest, the back one's very, very similar. But if I get the right lever, there it is, just like a bicycle, in fact an early bicycle, but wouldn't stop you very well. What else have we got? Over here, a little decompressor lever. Because the way of starting this one, you used to pedal like mad with this pedal as you went down the road, hold that little decompressor lever up, which as you can see here, held the valve open, and it allowed the engine to turn over then, and then when you got to the required speed, let go, and away it went. With a bit of luck, it fired up. But before I leave this one, see this petrol tank in here, this little compartment. A battery used to live in there, and there's the coil, the ignition system. It all looks a bit rotten, but that shows it's a genuine tool, doesn't it, eh? So early battery ignition. Don't fancy the saddle much, mind you, on this one. Now I know we said we'd gone on to bikes, but we're still in 1902, but I just couldn't walk past this one. As I say, still 1902, and this is the Century 4 car. The passenger there sits actually in the front of the driver. But what you might be saying, what do I do with my hands? There's no steering wheel here, but I'll tell you what there is. There's a water tank here for the radiator, which you could keep your hands nice and warm. But what on earth do you do to steer it? See this lever? This is what you use. It's just like a tank. Literally, on the tank track, you just pull this lever backwards and forwards, and the front wheels move, or they would do if we were rolling forward. Absolutely amazing thing. And if you weren't busy enough with that, you've got another lever on the left-hand side which operates a clutch. Down here, there's 2 levers just for the carburettor. Left-hand one with a lovely little ratchet. There it goes. That operates the air, and the other one on the other side actually operates the fuel. So there's 2 levers to juggle with there. What else have we got? There's another ignition advance one on the top here. There's a little valve, there's a decompression lever there. What else have we got? Band brake down the back there. You've got a foot lever here for the brake, so at least you've got something to do with your feet. And one other thing that you've got here, you haven't got a horn as such, but you've got a bell. Look at this. When it goes, there it goes. How about that? All aboard. What an absolutely amazing contraption. Back to bikes then, and by 1906 we're starting to see some further development. See these big swoopy bars coming well back here. I've even got my feet forward here, real cruiser style. But up on the bars, the air levers and throttle levers have now been moved up here, not down on the tank. I've got a foot operated lever here for the rear brake, so that's pretty cool. And down here, see this belt? This belt is still canvas construction, but it's actually made up of links, very much like a chain, which means as the belt wore, you could actually adjust it for its length. So there's another bit of sophistication for it. And down the front there is the first suspension that I've seen on these bikes. Spring suspension with a little linkage set up. So someone's taking the shocks out to the front there. And next to me here is a Royal Enfield. That's got a spring down the front here with this nice linkage. Gives you a more comfortable ride. And then here's a lovely name for you, a Lincoln Elk. And that's got suspension as well, all beautifully plated there. And something else that strikes me, looking at all these three bikes, green was obviously the colour of the early 1900s. But innovation was the name of the game, and if you thought Ducati had a monopoly on 90-degree V-twins, think again, because this Premier of 1909 was a V-twin, 548cc. And also they've modified the front suspension. They've got another set of springs, a lower set and an upper set. Super, super comfortable. Now, talking of smooth rides, what about this for a seat? But it's not just the seat. On this beautiful Wilkinson, it's got a 4-cylinder water-cooled engine. And not only that, it's a shaft drive too. And Wilkinson, by the way, are the same people who make the Razors today. And this was back in 1912. And look, it's even got leaf-springing rear suspension. Now, while people like Wilkinson were concentrating on making very sophisticated motorcycles, we come to something like this Rudge Multi. In fact, it's got virtually no suspension at all, just a little spring up the front end. But what it has got, the Rudge Multi, meant that it was multi-speed. Very, very clever. See this lever here on the tank with the ratchet down the back here? Won't move far because it's stationary. But this lever actually moves a pulley, the two halves of a pulley in and out, which means the belt can either be down there where it is or up on the top end. So it alters the actual speed of the belt between the engine and the back wheel. There's a linkage under there which correspondingly alters the distance of these two halves of the pulley apart, so the belt always remains in the same tension. And what you've got there is an automatic transmission, multi-variable speed from I think about 3-to-1 to 7.5-to-1, just like a modern scooter. Very, very clever. This was in 1913. Now, something common to all bikes of this era, and no, it's not me, but it's an oil pump, because on these they didn't have an engine-driven oil pump. They actually had a little pump on the petrol tank, and the oil pumper was you, because what you had to do was undo the little catch there, pull this plunger up, unfortunately this one's a bit stiff, and pump this up and down, because what you had was a split petrol tank. Petrol that side, oil this side, pump this up, get the pressure, adjust this little gauge on the top here, and then you'd see in the sight glass so many drips a minute of oil going through to your engine. So you imagine keeping your eye on that. You needed a light on that. But talking about lighting, nice little link that there. See this lot? This is acetylene lighting, and that was used by using calcium carbide. And you put that in this gas generator here, little block of calcium carbide, filled it up with water, and when water drips onto calcium carbide, it gives off acetylene gas. So what, you might say? Well, that comes through a little pipe here to the front and the back light, and in here you can actually see it's not a wick, but it's a little gas burner. And believe it or not, once you generated the gas, or you thought you had, you actually sniffed it, is it going or not, lit it, big puff of smoke or light or whatever, closed it, and off you went on your way with a bit of luck, and you had a brilliant white light. But perhaps even more sophistication came in 1915, because here on this new Hudson we had the first electric lighting set up. Not much to say about it other than it's actually there, made by old Joseph Lucas in those days. But the interesting thing is it actually cost you £7 as an extra. Now £7 was a craftsman's wages for a month, and so that's a lot of money. It's probably about 1,500 quid, 1,500 quid for an extra. So perhaps it's no surprise that electrical lighting didn't become standard on bikes until the mid-30s. Now there's absolutely loads of bikes here, and all we've really done is just scratch the surface of the British bike history. But really these have just been overblown bicycles. Might sound a bit cruel, but when you think of it, it's been a big engine in a very big bicycle frame. And in fact, it wasn't until the 1930s that something beautiful like this Brough Superior came along. But unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until a future programme until we can see more of things like this.